Okay, good morning, everybody. It's 8 a.m. I'll call the meeting of the Madison Metropolitan Sewerage District Commission to order. I just want to say that Commissioner Wilson is absent, and we have participating by Zoom or virtually Commissioners Ken Clark and Marcia Rummel. Okay, so that leaves Commissioner Estrix, Freeze, Murphy, Meyer, Havel, and Bookland as those of us here in person. So we have 8 commission members present either virtually or in person. So that gives us a quorum. Welcome to all of our guests that are participating either virtually or here in the room. Janelle, would you like to go through the virtual meeting guidance, please?
Certainly. Good morning, commissioners, members of the public, and staff. To help us have a smooth meeting, I'm going to review just a few decorum rules and guidance to follow, please. First, today, it's a little unique. We're on a hybrid approach here. There are a few things that are slightly different than Fitchburg. So, for example, for those attending virtually, we have limited audio and visual capabilities and wanted to be clear on what you can expect today. If you are attending virtually, you'll be able to see today's presentation, hopefully in one moment, and you'll be able to hear the discussion taking place. What you will not see is the discussion taking place in the room, and we will not be able to see you. The visual limitations are the same whether you're on Zoom or attending via live stream on YouTube today. For our virtual guest, you will be following any in-room people today that wish to speak, and I will call on you by name. For those who are in person and wish to speak, please ensure you have registered at the door. And for those who wish to speak and who have joined us virtually, please send a direct message in the chat room to Lynn Coleman. Once again, please direct a message to Lynn Coleman in the chat room if you're on virtually and you would like to speak. Please note that no comments are being accepted via chat room. Turning my page, one moment. For guests in the room that wish to speak, you will each have 3 minutes. We have a timer here, so you will be able to have a visual as to how much time you have left. When your name is called, please step forward to the mic, and your 3 minutes will begin. All guests that are speaking, we ask that you please state your name before speaking for the record, and I will also cue you when you have 30 seconds left. With that, those are our decorum rules today. Let's have a great meeting, everybody, and thank you.
Thank you, Janelle. So, Michael, do you have any announcements?
President Hubble, no announcements today.
Okay. Mike Lipsky, you're going to give a welcome to Amy Deming.
Hi, Commission. Thank you, Mike Lipsky, HR Manager here at the district, and I'm very excited to introduce Amy Deming as our new Organizational Development Specialist. If you remember, the Organizational Development Specialist position is a new position that was approved in the budget for this year. Amy's been a Leadership Development Specialist at the City of Madison since May of 2021, prior to coming to us. She's just finished her master's degree in Organizational Leadership at Arizona State University. Before working in the HR department at the city, she was at the water utility for over 10 years, mostly doing community outreach. Served on several City of Madison teams focused on employee engagement and diversity, equity, and inclusion. Outside of work, Amy loves outdoor adventuring, reading, and is a big foodie. And just on a note, I did not overlap in my time at the HR department with Amy, but I knew her when she was at the water utility. I'm pretty sure 10 years ago she asked me a question about personnel records and what to keep in personnel files. And I told Amy I'd get back to her after consulting with the city attorney's office. So Amy, let me get back to you. I still don't know. But anyways, welcome, Amy.
Welcome, Amy. Okay, then we're going to have Lisa Coleman introducing Darren Jacobson.
Good morning. I'm Lisa Coleman, the Director of Engineering, and I'm very pleased this morning to welcome Darren Jacobson as a project engineer to our engineering department. So we're very excited to get him. He's got a lot of great experience, and he's going to be a great asset for us on lots of projects that we have coming up. He comes to us from City of Verona, where he was the Director of Public Works for the last 7 years. And before that, he worked for AECOM for about 10 years, and he actually worked on some district projects when he was a consultant at AECOM. So, you know, he's kind of familiar with us already, having worked in the community for a while. So it's going to be, we're real happy to have him with our group. Theron likes camping and fishing, and we figured out from chatting in the last couple of weeks that we like to vacation on the exact same lake in northern Wisconsin. So if we run into each other there, we're not going to talk about work. So, yeah. So welcome, Theron. Thank you.
Okay, welcome, Theron. And now we have appearances by the public. So is there anybody who wishes to speak on any item on the agenda, including Badger Mill Creek?
I call to the mic, Tup Wells, please.
Good morning, Commission. My name is Tup Wells, Vice President of Trout Unlimited and a former Commission member. I guess I'm sorry to be here for this occasion. I think I have a sense of how y'all might vote. I hope you won't. I hope you'll take a little more time to consider a decision. I guess what I'll focus on, which is the latest news that appeared yesterday, fairly late, which is a little more detail about the $1 million program. That program is really fatally flawed. I think some of the Commission at the last meeting hoped that that would be a step in not only protecting the creek, but convincing some stakeholders that the district had the best interest of the creek at heart. It really doesn't do that. In fact, it's salt in an open wound. I think it suffers from two really bad starting points. First of all, I think the folks who put this plan together failed to recognize how much disappointment your public engagement process and your analytical process has caused. Frankly, I think you're going to find stakeholders reluctant to trust the district on this score. Secondly, we return to a theme that you have heard over and over and over again. This process seems to have been created without any public input, even the number. How did people come up with $1 million? Restoring and protecting trout streams is difficult, technical, and expensive work. There's no evidence in this process that the district staff or the Commission has consulted closely with DNR experts or any other experts for that matter. We in Trout Unlimited work closely with biologists. We work very, very closely, volunteer, and help fund major projects, and some of the procedures and care one needs to take, the expenses one incurs, and the time it takes to do even one of these projects well really does not seem to be reflected in that program. I don't think this is the end of the process. We're looking forward to an extensive CARP-C and DNR review of what we fear your decision will be, and certainly many of us advocates will continue to fight for the creek. I'm sure many of you entered this with best intentions. I wish the process had been more successful in both technical and human terms.
Next to the mic, Pat Bergen, please.
Good morning, Commissioner. That should be. My name is Pat Bergen, and I live right next to the Badger Mill Creek, and I'm going to be speaking predominantly about the costs. And in looking at the upfront tertiary cost alternatives presented by the staff, I noticed that 53% of the costs are for building and equipment, and 47% of the costs are undefined. This undefined is a big number. We're looking at undefined scope, $1.4 million, general conditions, $2.3 million, supply chain escalator, $0.8 million, contingencies, $3.8 million, technical services, $2.8 million, $12.1 million undefined costs. I recommend that you make a motion to have your staff better define these undefined costs. Also, in order to pay for these things, we need to work on some grants. These grants don't exist right now. Dane County supervisors said they might be willing to, quote, open their pocketbooks. Maybe we can get some money, federal money from the governor, from COVID. We have a unique situation to return the water to our watershed. Marty told me that we use low interest rate loans, but instead of that, I recommend you make a motion to instruct your staff to work with these entities to help with funding. The annual cost is about $400,000. That would only take a small increase, like a 0.4% increase, to cover that cost in our bills, which would be roughly about a nickel a month for ratepayers, based on my bill. So if we take a small increase, the $4.5 million at the bottom of the second page on that, that goes away, and it should. I recommend you make a motion to instruct your staff to calculate what the rate increase per household would be to cover just these annual costs. Confirm these numbers. Working together with the community, we can solve this phosphorus problem while doing, quote, no harm to a Class 2 trout stream, and that's appreciated. I recommend that we make a motion to create a task force comprised of the commissioner, MMSD staff, and all interested municipalities and organizations to meet together monthly to study all facets of this complex problem and to present solution options for your review in the next 6 months. And we can start today. I recommend you make a motion to delay your decision for at least 1 month to get answers about these costs, possible funding, and to better understand what decision you will be making will have upon the trout stream. You simply don't have enough information to make the decision today. Interestingly enough, if we could get this thing down to 20 million, that'd be like 60 cents a month per ratepayer, the way I calculate it, or 10 million, which we know is building equipment, would be 30 cents, and 4 cents for a month.
Time.
Yeah, and 4 cents a month for just the annual costs. And as a ratepayer, I think we can afford these costs. Thank you.
At this time, I would like to ensure that nobody remaining in the room would like to speak. I only had the 2 registered in-room speakers today. Okay, we do have an individual virtually today. Lindsay Foy, you have the floor.
Good morning. I appreciate another opportunity to speak to you all on this issue. The data and the analysis presented in the final alternatives assessment report is a step toward learning about the influence the district's discharge has on the Badger Mill Creek watershed today, but it's not the whole story. We're still learning about this, and we continue to see information from DNR fish biologists that's counter to the conclusion that the stream is not dependent on the discharge, even considering increased precipitation. A decision to discontinue discharge will involve a process to amend the area-wide water quality plan with the Capital Area Regional Planning Commission. This and the DNR review process will provide opportunities to learn more and to address some of the remaining questions about impacts and potential for mitigation. The budget for mitigation and the implementation planning process itself should be structured in a way to consider and incorporate any of this information we learned through those reviews. We agree there's work to be done and cleanup that can be done in the stream and within the watershed. And some of that can be done regardless of the chosen compliance option. The fact remains is we still don't know if it's possible to meaningfully mitigate the decision to discontinue discharge to Badger Mill Creek and send all effluent to the Badfish Creek. We certainly don't know the cost of this mitigation, but these kinds of projects are very expensive, as Tuff pointed out earlier. Although all options have drawbacks, additional treatment meets the phosphorus requirements, it minimizes harm to 2 streams, and that's 2 of your 3 stated goals. So please continue to consider your options. Thank you.
At this time, I would like to offer the floor to others on virtual. If there is someone on virtual that would like to speak, this is your opportunity. Please raise your hand now in Zoom. Looks like we have no additional oh, excuse me. We do have one. Robert Bohannon, you have the floor.
Thank you. Apologies, I have dogs barking in the background, but just very quickly, I'm Robert Bohannon. I'm the board president of Upper Sugar River Watershed Association. And one of the things that hasn't been addressed in any of the comments that I want to make sure is we are also concerned about effects on Badfish Creek. And that is also something that needs far, far more attention than has been addressed before. There are concerns in Rock County, there are concerns in Badfish Creek, and they were only finding out about this a couple of months ago. And so it's not just a Badger Mill Creek issue, it's also a Badfish Creek. And I sincerely hope that that is taken under consideration. They have concerns that also need to be addressed. Thank you.
Once again, this is last call for a virtual comment. Okay, we have no other individuals who wish to speak, Commissioner Howell.
Okay, thank you to all who spoke virtually or in person. Excuse me, that'll move us to item 3 on the consent calendar. Do we have any questions on any of the items on the consent calendar before we get a motion?
Yes, I had a question on 3F, the wetland mitigation banking payment. Will I ask it now? Okay. The report said that the city of Verona had committed to reimburse the district for the cost of the mitigation. And I was just wondering how confident we are of that commitment. I read the report. It seemed like it was a fairly informal email or memo from the Public Works Director.
We have an MOU that was approved by the commission that puts that arrangement into place.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions on the consent calendar? Not, do we have a motion?
I'll move approval of the consent calendar.
Motion by Commissioner Murphy.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Freeze to approve the consent calendar. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
I think, okay, there we go. Okay. Okay, motion carries. Okay, so that will take us to the topic section, item 4, which is the review and approval, final Badger Mill Creek phosphorus compliance solution. Kathy and Marty, I think you were going to do a short presentation.
Thank you, Commissioner Hubble. My name is Kathy Lake. I'm the Pollution Prevention Manager, and I'm here to talk about the final Badger Mill Creek phosphorus compliance solution. This has been a very long, ongoing process. We have analyzed a variety of alternatives. It's been a very professional and technical analysis. We've worked with the agencies. We've worked with the stakeholders. We've engaged the public. We've listened. We've worked to answer the variety of questions and concerns that are out there. We have, as we've gone through this process, it has reinforced our recommendation to discontinue the flow to Badger Mill Creek as our final compliance alternative. In addition, as we've worked with the stakeholders and we've talked to a variety of individuals in the area, we've become aware of so many opportunities within the corridor. And that is why we recommend adding $1 million to support projects that help stream health and resiliency for Badger Mill Creek. As we've gone through this process, we've worked to figure out how we prioritize the funding plan for that $1 million. Go to the next one. So we have determined a process that will engage governmental and non-governmental stakeholders in a facilitated process that'll take a year. It'll start by working to understand the joint interests around that $1 million. How do we best help Badger Mill Creek, stream health and resiliency? We also want to understand the context and the variety of different projects and programs and other challenges in the region that could potentially be a synergetic solution. So once we have the interests and we have the context, we'll be able to prioritize the interests as a stakeholder group. And then once we have those interests prioritized, working to find the different ways we could address each of those interests. From that, we will work on prioritizing that funding, and we will be back to the Commission by September of 2024 with a funding plan to allocate that $1 million. So our timeline going forward, we have a required submittal to DNR due next week. It's our final compliance alternatives plan, which is required by our Wisconsin Pollution Discharge Elimination System permit. Then we're going to start immediately on identifying those individuals that are the stakeholders that represent the governmental and non-governmental entities interested in this process. We'll convene that stakeholder group prior to September 30th, 2023. Then we have a year to work through that coordination process to determine the interests, to prioritize the interests, and to develop that funding plan. At this point, I'd like to turn it back over to President Hovell to continue.
Okay, thank you, Kathy. Marty, you didn't have anything to say? Nope, okay. So that takes us to the commission discussion on the item. So we had the resolution that was in the pack and I believe was updated. And so that was what would be our 2023-05-25R8. So our now chance for the commission discussion, see if everything is, you all think of the project, the staff recommendation. Sarah?
Let me start with a question. I'm sorry if this is coming from left field, but just came to brains yesterday. Thinking about Badfish Creek, right? So I think $1 million for Badger Mill Creek makes sense. Having a year-long process of input makes sense. Sounds like we've got to get all those stakeholders together. We are not in a position, I would assume, as a district to do that ourselves, obviously, but with partners we could. Is there any opportunity for, if we were able to allocate additional funds, to also include any potential projects in Badfish that would allow for us to mitigate any potential impacts of, we don't think there's going to be anything, but like give us the flexibility in this planning process to include projects in Badfish should they present themselves as opportunities that we could positively contribute.
So the commission can do whatever they want. The one thing I'll say is that for that particular stream reach and watershed, we are providing funding under Yahara Winds already. So I presume this will be on top of what the existing investment already is. So that you guys can make any decision you'd like, but just keep in mind that there already is investment by the district in that particular watershed and also specifically for that particular stream through money given to partners to do specific works. So I'll answer that.
Marty, can I drill down on that a little bit? So I like this idea a lot too. And what worries me is that Yahara Winds is focused, it's great. I'm worried about it. I'm excited about it. But related to this very specific question, Yahara Winds focuses on the Yahara watershed. And my understanding of it is that likely very few projects would land in the Badfish portion of the watershed. Clarify that for me, please, Kathy, Marty. But when I think about this concept that Sarah's raised, I think about resiliency. It's a much broader bandwidth of or scope of consideration about watershed health and about resiliency than just phosphorus. And thinking about habitat and thinking about stream flows and temperatures and climate change and all of the many layered factors we're thinking about on this whole issue. But I like considering that long-term sort of health and resilience dimension for both of the watersheds that we're stakeholders in, that we're partners in, and that long-term consideration. So tell me more about how winds ends up targeting in the actual Badfish watershed, or am I right that it doesn't as much? I'd like to have that, enlighten this discussion a little bit.
So as our effluent return location, Badfish Creek is a priority for the district, and that's identified in the Yahara Winds Adaptive Management Plan. We have invested very heavily in the Badfish Creek watershed as part of Yahara Winds, in addition to projects that are on the ground with producers and others in that watershed. We have worked with Rock County Land Conservation Department, who has done stream bank restoration along Badfish Creek in their portion of Rock County. I think this is a great discussion, and I think it could be separate from this decision, and it could be part of the Yahara Winds discussions as we move forward, because we will have an amendment to our Yahara Winds Adaptive Management Plan that we can handle.
Commissioners?
Yeah, just to follow up on
Commissioners.
on that, you said there's going to be an amendment to the plan. Tell me a little bit more about
so
that.
ended up on the final decision because the contribution of the district would change to Yahara Winds through moving the water. We would have to amend the adaptive management plan.
Okay, because the Badger Mill Creek accounts for about, 8% of our flow? So adding that additional 8% to Badger
On an
Badfish Creek.
average base, on an average basis.
Yeah, right. And it never really exceeds, because the maximum capacity is 3.6 million. So sometimes it's actually lower.
I'll jump in here really quick. I'm Michael Muka. For those on Zoom that can't see us and they don't know who's speaking, so if we could just state your name every time, that might help those.
Okay, Sarah.
Yeah. Sarah Eskridge. So that was a very helpful addition, right? We're going to have to amend the Yahara Winds Plan anyway, so it makes sense to me. Again, I just threw this idea out there for the first time today, but it makes sense that we would maybe put a pin in that conversation, come back to it when we're amending Yahara Winds, because that's already the right group of stakeholders to be at the table. And separately, we have the group of stakeholders or we're starting to convene the group of stakeholders at the table for Badger Mill Creek. So I just am saying, because I brought it up, I'd also like to say I think it's still a very valid thing for us to consider. And in my opinion, let's bring that back into the conversation when we have the conversation about Yahara Winds, because there's potentially some value add there.
Beth.
Hi, this is Commissioner Bookland, and I would like to better understand the commitment by MMSD for Badger Mill Creek. So I applaud the effort to convene a group of stakeholders and the $1 million investment. I think that shows that as a district, we're committed to the Badger Mill Creek. What I'd like to better understand is how that $1 million will be spent. I mean, do you have any idea at this point? And is that a hard and fast number, or as we go along the process and identify other needs, would there be more funding potentially available in the future? Could we apply for grants, for example? And as we go forward with this, if we might consider not cutting off the flow 100% right from the start, but slowly decrease that flow as a potential, and then study the creek as that flow is decreased, so we better understand, the impacts as that flow is decreased, and look for other opportunities to increase the flow into the stream, for example, from storm water, from groundwater, and other reliable sources. So I'd like to really kind of understand a little bit more about your thinking around that.
As we have worked with a variety of different stakeholders and different organizations in the Badger Mill Creek watershed, what we've found is that there are significant flooding problems. There's high groundwater. There are projects that can't go forward because they don't have a natural way to drain. There are ways to leverage things that are challenging to others and improving the creek. I think our $1 million can be used to help projects move forward that have something that is a challenge or could potentially tweak some of the projects that are in the mix and can be used for other opportunities. So, for instance, if there are projects that are moving forward that could potentially help low flow conditions, that may be one of the interests that's identified in this process, and that is the interest and the prioritized interest, and we look to figure out, based on the people in the room and the experts that are working on these projects, if we figure out what the best solution is or the solution that people want to move forward, we can prioritize funding towards those projects. Wouldn't look at our funding as an all and nothing. There's so many other things going on in the region. There's other projects that are going on that overlap in many ways. There is, unlike the wastewater treatment plants that are really not eligible for a lot of grants, there are some of the other types of projects that could receive external funding. So I think the district is working to identify an allocation process. We can provide the money to those organizations that are going to put in place these enhancements or opportunities. And those organizations could also be benefiting from grants or other partnership funding.
Commissioner Freeze?
You had the second piece was around the flow.
Exactly. So on that flow, there are a variety of potential opportunities that could help to increase the low flow conditions in Badger Mill Creek. The challenge with slowly reducing down the flow, you could do it for a short period of time. We did work at 2 different periods when we discontinued flow, and we did analyze that period. We walked the corridor daily, multiple times a week. We assessed what was going on. We also found that the flow continued throughout that process. When we look to cannot reduce the flow lower than 1 CFS, so we could go down to 1 CFS and then to 0, just based on how our pumping works. We do need to have a final compliance alternative for phosphorus. And if water flowing to Badger Mill Creek, we need to couple it with something else. So there will still be too much phosphorus going into Badger Mill Creek. If we cut off our return to Badger Mill Creek, we will reduce that much phosphorus in Badger Mill Creek. That stream will be much closer to meeting water quality criteria routinely than when we are discharging.
Just have don't we have until 2028 to meet those?
So the final compliance, or the final compliance date in our permit is tied to construction. So if we are doing plans and specs and construction, the department will give us till 2028. I think this could go to Vanessa, but we wouldn't expect we would have fully till 2028 for this compliance.
Would we ask for an extension? We decided to, more slowly divert the.
Yeah, as Kathy mentioned, the current permit. Oh, I'm sorry, Vanessa Wishart. The current permit provides a compliance date of September 30th of 2028, again, based on requirements for installing treatment. I think, I don't know exactly what compliance schedule the department would provide if this is the option chosen, but I anticipate they would be willing to work with the district on a timeline for implementing this that takes into account the plans the district has to work with these stakeholders.
Commissioner Murphy?
Yeah, so just following up on that, so at this point, we really don't know what the deadline is for cutting off the flow if that's the alternative that we. Are isn't a specific date where that would have to happen at the.
We do have a date in our permit right now of September 30th, 2028. I think Kathy's note is that it's possible that there would be, that DNR would want to push that date up if compliance sooner is possible. So yes, I think there's some open-endedness right now about what that date would look like. Again, I would anticipate the department would be willing to continue to work with the district on making sure there's sufficient time for compliance to accommodate the work the district wants to do with these stakeholder groups. So I would not anticipate that there would be, if a decision is made today, that DNR would be looking for, that the flow gets turned off and compliance is accomplished in a year. I think there would be time to go through the process the district.
Thank you.
This is Marty. I just want to address Commissioner Buckland's question about the interest in why we'd want to delay and ramp down the flow. You talked about studying and learning more. I think there would be probably limited value in, since we go down to 1 CFS, we can't control that much of our variable. I don't think additional study would assist with what our end goal is, which is what are the interests in projects that we can do to help. Continued study doesn't answer that. I think that's unnecessary. So I think just we can talk about the timeline for turning off the flow, but I think we should understand what the value is for when we talk about.
So the value that I was thinking was it would give the stakeholder group and the MMSD and other folks time to really identify potential other sources of flow for the creek while we ramped that. So, for example, if there needed to be some engineering projects to increase the flow to that creek, that would give time in order to do that. That was kind of what I was.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Absolutely, we would have control over when we would shut it off and allow for that time we want, especially if you see our timeline here is pretty aggressive.
Well, Greg, are you on this topic or you have a separate question? Okay, Vanessa and then Greg.
Thanks. This is Vanessa Wishart. I wanted to make just one more point on this topic. The district's permit will be up for reissuance in 2025, so an application would need to be submitted for that by September of 24. So I think that's the time frame where we would get more clarity from DNR on what the next permit will look like and what final compliance date would be included there. So there is some time now for the district to prepare what it would want to see as a final compliance date, and to work with the department on that as well now.
So that is why staff had the September 2024 date as that ties to our next permit application. Okay. Greg?
This is Greg Freeze. So, Marty, Kathy, just a question. In terms of how this would operate, I just want to make sure I understand what it is not that the district would actually complete projects, but rather that much like Yahara Winds, we would be a funding agent for people who would best funding of some, correct?
Correct. The types of projects that we're talking about aren't projects that we would anticipate the district leading. We could provide funding to organizations such that they can put in place the project.
Well, I have a question based on that then, is who would lead this group then? Or anybody that would?
So we're planning to bring in an external facilitator to coordinate this group. So the district will work to get a facilitator and to help identify the stakeholders, both governmental and non-governmental. So people representing organizations will be those stakeholders that will work to identify this funding plan.
I would say, though, as an agency, the district would be helping to select the facilitator and convening the group and providing the resources.
Ezra's got a question, but I have just one question on that first. So would the commission approve whatever projects are funded, or we just give a pot and say, spend it as you will?
No, I think, we want to bring some, accountability to the use of these dollars. And that's why our plan is to bring forward, those suite of options. At that time, we can look at what the costs of projects are. So to address Commissioner's question about is $1 million, what is the right amount? It might be less, we might leverage other resources. Make that best business case.
Okay, Commissioner Meyer, then
I had a follow-up on that point.
We'll get to you.
And just, the $1 million, it isn't budgeted. Resolution is approved, it's a commitment to budget the money in. Would these individual projects that would be funded, then would they also projects in future? Or are we talking about providing $1 million allocated projects identified outside of the budget? Any idea at this point?
We do. We just looked at the draft capital improvement plan this week, and the way we've allocated it is $200,000 a year in the budget, in the CIP. However, we did budget for a treatment in the last CIP, a lot of money. So we're going to be in better shape with this. Walker, you can clarify that with me.
This is Bill Walker. I'm the Senior Director and responsible for development of the budget. I agree with what Michael said. The key points here are, in terms of, if you think of our 6-year financing plan, that plan, as Michael said, already accounts for approximately $13 million as a placeholder, if you will, for tertiary treatment. So the recommended option would obviously be a smaller impact on our 6-year plan than that. The question of the mechanics for how to budget for this, just at the moment, as I'm sitting here, as Michael said, we have included in the draft capital improvements plan the lesser amount for the recommended grant funding. I think what we would probably end up doing, following up on Commissioner Bookland's observation, is transfer that to the operating budget as essentially a line item for, think of it as grants. But in terms of the overall impact on the budget, the recommended option would be smaller than what we're already planning for.
Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Meyer.
All right, thank you. So, Kathy, I want to come back to what Commissioner Freeze was asking about a minute ago and flip it on its head. If there's a project that the group of stakeholders identifies that is a great project and doesn't have an obvious owner but us, Greg was asking, we're not going to implement these projects, right? It's going to be other folks. That's probably mostly true, but I'd hope we could preserve the option that we actually do lead on implementing a project where there's no one else to do it, but it's a great project that needs to happen. What do you have to say about that?
I think as we look at the corridor, there are multiple jurisdictions, there are multiple landowners. County is a large landowner. A lot of the areas in the town of Verona, the city of Verona, city of Fitchburg, city of Madison, and others. There are a variety of potential stakeholders that do have the capability to do the types of projects that we're looking at. If it turns out to be something that is a wastewater type project, then I mean, we don't discount that, but I think it is best for those that own, and it's their jurisdictions and their expertise to lead those types of projects.
Thank you. No, that I don't want to go out too far on a hypothetical limb, right? But I think that, let me come back to interest. It's always helpful. The interest I'm trying to express is that maximum flexibility in accomplishing the communally supported objectives for the watershed is what I'm after, and I think we all are, but I'm just sort of surfacing it to be really precise about naming it, and that let's not cut off options for sort of arbitrary reasons. Let's be flexible. Let's look for the best way forward to get the projects that the watershed can benefit from done in a timely fashion.
Yeah, this is Kathy Lake again. One of the projects that people have talked to us about already is the potential to, if we discontinue effluent return, is there a potential to reuse our effluent return pipe for groundwater return to the stream? And that's something that I think we would consider. And that's something, so we have easements, we have pipeline, and how we would transfer those types of things is something we would need to look at. But those are the types of things that we can, as we work together as a community to solve these problems, we can work with.
Is this on the same question topic? Because I wanted to give, at some point I wanted to ask Marcia, but if you're on the same topic, no. I just wanted to ask if Commissioner Clark or Commissioner Rummel want to weigh in? Had anything to say on this part of the top?
On this topic?
Yes.
I mean, it does sound like there's things that could be useful to work together on. So that's heartening. I'm not quite sure that all my questions have been answered as far as this being the best way, but I'll wait for that part of the conversation.
Okay, thank you. Ken, do you have anything to say on the projects that we would fund, $1 million?
No, I don't. I think the options and the questions that were asked so far are good ones, and we should pursue the majority of those in the future.
Okay. Then that will take us back to Commissioner Bookland.
Just really a kind of a comment is that I appreciate this conversation and the information. I think that's really useful, and I feel better about this. I would like to really know what would be the cutoff date for the flow, and I'm still not 100% sure that we can kind of reduce the flow, like to maybe cut it in half to Badger Mill Creek. And so what kind of timing are you thinking about as we go through this process?
Our next step is to submit a final compliance alternative plan to DNR, and we'll start there, and then we'll work with the department on that final compliance approval, and then work. So as we learn more, we can bring back like time periods and what we learn from the department between now and 2028. But
so would you share that with the commission, for example? When you put the plan together before you submit it to DNR, would you share that with the commission? I mean, what are you thinking about as far as process goes, and the commitment by the commission for that? So,
Marty, just to clarify, the final compliance plan to DNR isn't going to outline what you're asking for, so that's not going to help. We have not decided when we're going to completely turn off, if this is the final decision. I think that if the commission is asking to be part of that process, we can do that.
Freeze?
Yeah, this is Greg. So Marty, following up, what I heard Vanessa say before was application. We have a new application due next year, right? So presumably you have until that time to figure out what our plan might be to shut that water off. So we have about a year and a. Is that what I heard you say? Correct, Vanessa?
This is Vanessa. Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, so presumably the plan, I mean, we could over the next year gradually keep EOR studying the stream, and we could gradually take water down to the 1 CFS, right? And then we would, or now in next April, May, so then we have information be used when we prepare the final report to the DNR as to, and it might help us with what projects we would fund too. per $1 million contribution. Sense?
So this is Marty again, just to clarify, the final compliance report going to DNR at the end of this month. That's the last report we're required under our compliance plan and our permit. So the next step then is the water quality plan amendment and approval for this decision. At that point, we're in the queue for this decision. So in 2024, when we apply for our new permit, the permit's going to be prepared as if we have one outfall. That's what we're talking about. So don't confuse our DNR deadlines with something else that we might want to do in the meantime. That's all I'm trying to clarify.
Okay, so what you're saying is that we would have to have in our compliance plan that we submit if we propose to have a gradual cessation of the stormwater, of the retreated effluent to Badger Mill Creek done within the next month rather than done by September, because September 30th of next year is for our next actual our next overall permit application, right? So there's two applications. There's meeting this, and then there's the overall one that for reapproval for our overall wastewater.
To clarify your statement, because it's partially correct, we don't have to specify the plan for turning off the pipe. We just have to provide DNR with our plan for compliance, which is at some point we're not going to be discharging phosphorus. Then it's up to us and how we actually implement that compliance option, and we'll work obviously with DNR on what that looks like, but I'm hearing that the commission wants to also be involved with that, so we'll build that into the process.
Okay, so I'm thinking that it's wise to try to do a gradual cessation for 1 year to May or April of 2024 to give us information for that we can use when we actually make the next full application. This seems logical to me as to that, as to the cessation full. Commissioner Eskridge?
Thanks. This is Sarah. Marty, I heard you say earlier that if we were to lower the amount of flow, it may make no difference in stream flow. There seems to not be clarity on, like, there maybe is disagreement on that, or I guess my point is, I am not an expert in stream health, and right, that's not my job here as a commissioner. I don't need to be the technical expert. And so what I would, instead of prescribing the solutions for staff and stakeholders, what I would say, to get back to Ezra's good point about thinking about interests, is that we have an interest as a commission in exploring a process in the most robust way possible. And if that were to include slowing down our flow and monitoring that, and that made sense, we're all for that making sense. But I would hate for us as commissioners to try to jump in and be technical experts that we're not and prescribe some of those solutions in the way in which we approve this today. So I'm getting more and more comfortable, and I agree, Beth, like, it's nice to have this conversation because it's helpful to understand better what we're thinking. But at least from my perspective, my interest is that we are really open to, as we have been throughout this whole process of the years of this work, I think, open to different solutions and not knowing yet the answer to all of these things, but being robust in our science and analysis and use of expertise to dictate what the best solution is. And as someone who's not an expert myself, I'm going to need to lean on staff and our expert consultants and expert stakeholders, quite frankly. I mean, we have people who know this stuff. And so I'm comfortable with us getting periodic reports from the staff team on this process. But I don't think, I would caution us as a commission to that we not try to prescribe the process ourselves. Because I just don't think we're in a position to.
I would agree, Sarah, but I really would like to, as a commission, understand how we look at all our options, analyze the options, and come up with the best. And I really do think maybe a gradual decrease in the flow over time is something that I would really like to see considered. So, yeah.
Okay, Ezra?
Thanks. Ezra Meyer here. I think it's good that we're surfacing all this because to my mind, there's some practical considerations. We've tended to look at capital costs and operational, implications for the different solutions, but we're sort of overlooking what I know Kathy's thinking about and what I know Marty's thinking about, which is that we're committing significant staff resources over the next year to, I'm actually starting to think of it as two different processes. There's a process identified around Badger Mill Creek stakeholders and watershed health and resiliency initiatives, which is really great. But I think this is worthy of calling out as a separate process is some thinking, and I think it's got to be pretty quick, but there's some great experts around the table that can weigh in on it. Let's be flexible about how we manage flow as we work towards turning it off, if indeed this is the path we're going to go on. Let's be flexible there. Let's think about aspects that can be studied around the long-term trout health in the watershed. Let's think about other dimensions of how flow plays a role in the overall health of the watershed in this next year or so. However, we've got, it's not all the way to 28, but it's probably more than next September, actually. It's sort of in the middle of those two time bars. So you're hearing an interest from us in being flexible there. You're hearing, I think, at least I know I'm expressing support for staffs making this a priority, although my caution is, to my mind, the $1 million and that process is the higher priority of the two. We could spend a ton of time and downplay the importance of that one and overdo thinking about this flow management thing. I just want to make sure, at least my opinion is clear, there's a hierarchy there, and the $1 million and the big long-term watershed health and resiliency initiatives are the far more important of the two. I'm convinced, I think we're hearing a number of us are convinced that the impact on the flow in the Badger Mill Creek of turning off our 3.6 MGD are minimal. Nothing, but they're minimal. Thank God. What a neat finding of this incredible effort that's gone on for years to research this. So hopefully that's helpful. I think we don't want to forget about that staff impact and the reality that means for other projects that are important and everything. That CIP is important, the budget's important, but staff resources is also an important scarce resource that we have to allocate and be careful with. Thank you.
Okay. We've discussed a lot about the Badger Mill Creek in terms of its flow and what maybe to do or not do, and the process and the $1 million, but we haven't really had a robust discussion as to the staff recommendation if this is the right thing to do. So I'm thinking by the questioning that most people do tend to agree with the staff recommendation in that regard. If not, I think it's time to hear, the kick back up to the higher level, that 10,000 feet or 20,000 feet.
Commissioner Havel?
Yes.
You do have Commissioner Rummel Birchall with her hand up.
Okay. Commissioner Rummel, go ahead.
Thank you, everyone. I'm the newbie to this discussion, and as Sarah pointed out, we're not the technical experts, and I'm certainly learning what I don't know. But that said, I guess when I think about why I'm here is that we have a phosphorus problem in our groundwater and surface waters, and we need to solve that problem. And to me, the problem is bigger than Badger Mill Creek. It's also the Badfish Creek, and it's a bigger system-wide issue. And I can't say that I'm convinced, because I don't know enough, I'm not saying the information is not there, about what our future plans are for tertiary treatment. And so for me, it's hard for me to go forward with this, although I probably see, I can count votes, but I just, honestly, I think about other kinds of stuff in our water too, and in our wastewater now. I didn't used to think about our wastewater, but here I am thinking about it. So like PFAS, mercury, chloride, all these things that we know we need to deal with. And, the argument against tertiary is, oh, it costs so much money. But I don't know is what future plans, are we going to be faced with regulatory changes to deal with some of these other contaminants? And I'm sure you could tell me an answer and I'm not sure I'll absorb it all, but I guess for me, that's an unknown question that, even just in the news today, we're closing beaches in Madison because of algal, toxic algae, and that's because of phosphorus. So it's not like so, okay, stop there. And then I'm thinking, reducing the flow, I'm really liking what Commissioner Bookland's saying, because, that does reduce the phosphorus, reducing the flow, and whether or not it may or may not affect the resilience of the stream. I'm hearing our science say it's okay and others concerned. So I'm not there yet, but it does seem like a reduction in the flow might help with our phosphorus question. And I'll stop there, but I guess that's my main questions and concerns. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Kathy, you have?
Michael, do you want me to take? So my name is Kathy Lake. I'm going to try to address a couple of your comments, Commissioner Rummel. The first is that the district has been very committed to phosphorus reduction for many years. We continue to optimize and upgrade our plant to remove more and more phosphorus. The phosphorus requirements that we need to meet now are significantly more stringent than what was in our last permit. For the majority of our effluent return goes to Badfish Creek, and that's part of the Yahara Winds project. The district discharges downstream of the Yahara chain of lakes. So the algae blooms that are upstream of our plant do not have any district contribution of phosphorus. But the good thing about the Yahara Winds project is that we're investing funds from us and from a variety of other municipalities throughout the region to put in place practices that will reduce phosphorus throughout the entire watershed. The district has been a leader in phosphorus reduction and continues to be a leader in phosphorus reduction. When we look at other parameters, I'm very excited to have a new person looking at wastewater from all of these perspectives, because this is what we do as wastewater professionals. We're looking at the future, at what we need to, how we make our water and our fertilizer and our air quality better and better. And when we look historically at our effluent return, it has gotten better and better and better each time we've upgraded our plant. As we look to the future, there are potentially other parameters that we will be looking to figure out solutions to meet. And adding tertiary treatment at the plant that we're talking about today adds only phosphorus reduction on the part of our water that goes to Badger Mill Creek. It doesn't do anything for the Yahara Lakes, doesn't do anything for Badfish Creek's in-stream effluent concentration, but the Yahara Winds project is getting at phosphorus reduction in Badfish Creek, as well as the entire Yahara Basin. When we look to the future, this will be part of what the commission does going forward, is looking at how do we move forward with addressing other parameters and other contaminants and make our water safe for public health and the environment, which is our mission. And we can do that as we look to solve each individual problem and each individual challenge in the best possible way, so we have the resources to move forward in these bigger picture.
Mr. Estrich?
Yeah, that was really helpful, Kathy. Thank you. And I think just to emphasize one point, make sure I'm hearing and reading this correctly, that helps me feel better about the staff recommendation, is that actually having one plant and one discharge location rather than tertiary treatment on one small part of our discharge is actually a more efficient way to get at future concerns and pollutants and parameters. And so if we are being, and this is what you're saying, right? So I'm just trying to reinforce it, right? If we are thinking strategically about the future, we are going to be better positioned by having one discharge point and one plant to do the needed improvements over time. And so from a responsibility perspective as a commissioner, that's what in part gives me so much comfort with the staff recommendation that it's the right thing to do because of all of the science, because of the work, because of the conversations that we've had. I'm comfortable with that, even though there are stakeholders who are frustrated by that decision, and I appreciate that as well. And so that's why this two-pronged approach makes so much sense to me, because the concern in Badger Mill Creek is a very specific concern about Badger Mill Creek. But these broader issues that Commissioner Rummel's bringing up are issues that we are better able to tackle, actually, if we have one discharge point. And that is actually, in some ways, exciting about the future and our ability to manage and be resilient and moving forward.
Okay, we want to get a motion on the table before we then can get into additional discussion. Okay, motion by Commissioner Eschert for the commission to approve R 2023-525R8, correct? Okay, do we have a second to that motion?
This is Commissioner Freeze, I'll second.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Eschert, second by Commissioner Freeze to approve resolution 2023-0525R8, and we'll have further discussion with Commissioner Murphy, then Commissioner Bookland, I believe.
Yeah, this is Murphy. Yeah, I think the staff recommendation is the right recommendation, as frustrating as it is. Frustrated with staff. I'm frustrated not having other good alternatives to consider. And I think several months ago when we found out that the alternatives we thought we would be able to work with were viable. So we're left with this, and now I'm frustrated because I would rather see plans and projects that we're hoping will be able to be identified to mitigate any potential negative impacts. So really having that process completed and those plans and projects in place provide everyone with more confidence that cutting off the flow won't do any harm to the stream. We think that cutting off the flow will be maybe minimal. Really have been nice to have been able to complete this or making this decision. Unfortunately, we don't have that opportunity because we have a deadline, and so I'm very much in support of the resolution staff recommendation, and I appreciate the discussion that we've had today because it gives me a better sense for the process that we can use moving forward. I like I hear about being able to work with the DNR to provide some flexibility in timing of ultimately shutting off the flow and potential reductions in the flow between now and that time. Exactly what that's going to look like is lots that will be coming back to the commission for us to consider more about that. So with all that said, I vote in favor of the.
Okay, thank you, Brad. Commissioner Bookland?
A couple of things. First, I want to acknowledge the significant effort that went in by MMSD on this whole project. I know that there was significant time and effort, and I appreciate all the hard work that has gone into this. I think it's really very, very well appreciated. I'd like to say that I think this is an opportunity to have a win-win situation. And I'd like us to look at that as a possibility, because I do think that that is a real possibility from a number of different perspectives. So I hear the concern about Badger Mill Creek. And I do think that there's a potential to return that creek to its natural state over time. And I think that that's a potential that could be a plus for that creek. And I look forward to this stakeholder group convening to look at the opportunities to do that, because I really do think that there are opportunities that we aren't even aware of in this room now. Maybe some of our experts are, but there are opportunities to do that. And I look forward to hearing about those opportunities, how we can, return that creek to its natural state and continue as a Class 2 or maybe even a Class 1 trout stream, who knows? But there are those opportunities. I also recognize the fact that once we have a single effluent, that we have opportunities there to improve the quality of that effluent continually, because we can focus our efforts on one single source, and that is a big benefit. So we can look at opportunities to decrease phosphorus, to decrease chloride, to decrease PFAS and some of the other contaminants that we are concerned about in the future. And so that gives us more opportunity to really focus on that and improve overall water quality. And I think that's really important. The other thing is, as a commission, we've talked about decreasing our carbon footprint, and we're concerned about climate change, as I am. And building a tertiary treatment plant and continuing to pump with more energy expenditure to Badger Mill Creek is not the right thing to do, because it increases our carbon footprint. And we need to look at the big picture, because we are all members of this planet Earth. So I really think that by doing the right thing, and this is overall in the big picture of things, the right thing to do. Also, we have to be concerned about our owner communities. And yes, some of us can afford a 3 or 4% increase in the rate, but there are customers of ours who can't afford that. And as a commissioner, I have to think about those customers, because we have a community of people who don't have the resources to pay their utility bills. We have to think about them too. And well, for me, a 3 or 4% increases, it doesn't bother me one bit. But for some of our customers, it is a big deal. I need to make sure that those rates stay steady, or at least we maintain those increases and really think about those. So for all of those reasons, I support this.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Commissioner Clark or Commissioner Rummel have any comments? Ezra, you have a?
Please, yeah.
Ezra, why don't you go ahead?
Thanks, Tom. Ezra Meyer here. I want to do a quick double down on something that Commissioner Bookland just mentioned. I know that my trout advocate friends out there in the audience know this. One of the most mortal threats to trout in the state of Wisconsin is climate change. And the Wisconsin Initiative on Climate Change Impacts points out that we may not have trout suitable waters in Wisconsin by the end of this century if we continue on the business as usual case on climate. And so absolutely climate change is a critically important factor underlying how I come to the decision, which is, let me back up, I suppose, to be clear, I support the staff recommendation as well, and I think we've got to do it today. I think that there's a call for more process and sort of a delay. I think the right place for all of us to put our process, effort, and attention and time and space going forward is on the process that Kathy has outlined that we're proposing as part of this direction. But anyway, I just wanted to double down on that climate change point. Critically important, and this, as those of us on the commission know, others who maybe don't follow every one of our meetings may not be aware, but this issue of the significant energy footprint that goes into a force main pumping all the way out to Verona, it came up in our energy report as an opportunity for us to reduce our climate change footprint as a district, and for good reason. It's a lot of energy use there, and so that on top of all these other good reasons why I think this is the right decision is what helps me come to it. Feeling comfortable about it. I wonder, I promised a little bit of a narrative story last time, I might remember, and I want to do it now if that's okay, because I have this same sort of win-win sense that Commissioner Bookland mentioned a minute ago. I know it doesn't feel that way for folks who really care about their local water resources out there, but I think when you look at it in the big picture, the way we have to, it's how I see it. It's all it is. I submit it as my view on this, but we've had this excellent work by the district staff and by our consultants. We have this amazing interest and excitement on the part of folks who care so deeply about their water bodies, both water bodies in question here, right? Badger Mill and Badfish Creeks. We have incredible past decisions and deliberations that brought us here, right? We had regional planning commissions and the district staff and the DNR and others decide that this watershed balancing effort was something we should do in the first place. It was a good idea. I think we're making a good choice today on the shoulders of a good choice in the late 1990s. It was the right thing, and I think everyone who sees the wonderful resource in Badger Mill Creek understands that part of the story. The whole region has shown this incredible commitment to its water resources. A piece that I think surfaced here as we uncovered all the information and compiled it in one place, we have done the right thing on stormwater. We've gone above and beyond state requirements in this county and in these communities that are part of the district, and we are restoring a natural hydrology connection between ground and surface water. Greg, kudos to you, and all the other folks who have been part of this. But the story of Badger Mill Creek is a really positive one today when we look at it because of all of these incredible layered good decisions, good work, and it's an amazing sort of wonderful story that the sort of difference of opinion amongst good friends in the community and the watershed hurts. But this big picture positive story for me is sort of what makes me feel okay coming today to make a decision that I know some friends are not happy with. Thinking about what else I wanted to say by way of sort of this story. We've got brown trout reproducing naturally in Badger Mill Creek. The community loves this water resource. It's a really different resource than it was in the 1990s, but it's a success story. I guess I'm really trying to make, sort of address this narrative of we have a success story here, and it doesn't stop or change or shift onto a negative trajectory. In my view, and it's an optimistic view. It's that I'm a scientist. I know that we don't know all of the answers about where it's going forward. There are things outside of our control, including climate change. There's going to be development pressure in the watershed. These things are all happening, but we also have some control over some things, and I'm optimistic about a continued successful trajectory going forward for both Badger Mill Creek and Badfish Creeks. That second part of our proposal obviously is so key to that. I think if we were just cutting and running, which we're not, it could be a different path forward. But there are opportunities out there. I'm convinced by that with my watershed restoration knowledge as a professional in this area, and I think resources that we can bring to the table and that the communities can bring to the table and the nonprofit world can bring to the table, and we can seek some help from outside entities. There's a lot of opportunity to do some good things, and I'm compelled that there's a pretty neat positive story to be told around Badger Mill Creek and these sort of 25 years of history. And I think looking back 25 more years, hence from today, it's going to be a continued positive story. And so I'm excited about that. It's not an easy decision, but I think it's the right one. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ezra. Anyone else? Any other commission members? Commissioner Rummel, go ahead.
Thank you. You heard from some of the public that they asked for us to delay. And from the conversation, it sounds to me that the final decision on when to cut off the flow is not like, June 1st, which gives me some comfort and hopefully others. But I'm wondering if we can start this process sooner than the end of September, and maybe it's not possible, but just so that we don't stop this, kind of, we're in a momentum, I think, or I am anyway. And I'm wondering if that's a possibility. And I did sort of tell everyone, like staff, that, wow, you know, preparing for these meetings, reading hundreds of pages of stuff takes a lot of work. So I do appreciate all the work that has taken place and other commissioners' dedication to reading and following and trying to understand the values and issues that we are faced with deciding. One thing that really struck me is we're kind of faced with this contradiction. And that is, whereas the folks who use and love Badger Mill Creek see this effluent as this incredible resource that's brought to life this wonderful, you know, trout stream and wildlife area. The folks that we hear from Badfish Creek are like, man, this effluent is too strong. It's eroding our banks. It's E. coli, etc. So this is what we have to hold, both these sides, because I really don't know that. I mean, I think the point that one effluent discharge is really, I think, a real fundamental argument for me that why to support this moving forward. But I still think that we're faced with these contradictory feelings and some level of trust that we need to keep working on with our community owners and stakeholders. That I know I do hear that our people are committed to that, but I just want to call it out as something that, as a local government official, you just really don't want people to lose trust in you. And so I feel that weight, and I'm trying to carry that on behalf of my role in this position. And yeah, I'm really struck by this whole idea, like the whole way that the utility tells us that this effluent's a resource. And I guess I understand that, but I just still see it's got stuff in it that we have to manage and control and hopefully eliminate. So, you know, I think that's that our burden is, to share this, like, okay, we providing this treated water and putting it back into the system, but at what cost and how do we do it? So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ken, do you have anything you want to comment on?
Tom, I was just going to say, I'd like to thank Kathy and Marty for their hard work and efforts on this topic. And I'm in support of the resolution. I think Kathy pointed out a couple of flow options that stuck out to me, which, if we improve our work with a group to improve the creek and benefit other projects and or flooding issues at the same time, that's a win. And also, if the current pipe can be used to supply additional water to Badger Mill Creek, I don't know if that's an option or not, but that's something interesting to explore on this topic also.
Okay, thank you, Ken. Any other commissioners? Ezra?
Thanks, Tom. Ezra Meyer here. I'm inclined to bring up one other thing around the $1 million proposal. You know, and folks have said it on the commission, I think, and in the, the audience watching. Where'd you get $1 million? Why that number? You've heard me appeal to flexibility a couple times already today, and I want to, around that dollar figure. I'm open to that being larger, if larger is what Badger Mill Creek needs. I also am open to the consideration that Sarah raised earlier in the meeting that we might want to think about being a partner in resiliency and health efforts for the watershed. They're much bigger than just phosphorus in the Badfish Creek. So I don't know if this, I could turn this into a sort of friendly amendment or something, a motion and something to consider, or just throw it out there as, I'd like to hear from other commissioners, I guess, if I can be so bold. But I'm curious if others are open to, we could make decisions on this at a number of points along the next 6 months, year, certainly out at the, year point when that, or a little over a year when the report comes back from the stakeholder group. But I would hope we might be flexible to increase those resources, if indeed increased resources over just $1 million are what's needed to get the job done. So I wanted to surface that today, maybe see if folks want to respond and see where it goes. I might be willing to put it in as a motion. Let's see.
Commissioner Murphy?
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't know if we need a motion, to do it, but I was thinking about the same thing. And when we were talking about the need to budget these funds, in future capital and operating budgets, well, that might be the appropriate time to, nail down the exact amounts that we're going to be talking about for projects. Whether it's $1 million or it's more than that, that's, I'm completely flexible in thinking about a different number. That's what's required.
I am as well, and I appreciate Commissioner Murphy's point earlier that, yeah, ideally we would already have gone through this year-long process of figuring this stuff out by the time we were approving this motion today. But looking at the wording, right, we're resolving that we will commit $1 million. We're not resolving we won't commit more. We aren't, right? So there's nothing that would prohibit us from doing that in the future based on what we passed today. So I'm completely comfortable passing the resolution as it's drafted, and we've made clear, right, that we want staff to have, to your point, Commissioner Meyer, flexibility to work with stakeholders to identify what's going to make the most sense, right? And maybe it isn't $1 million, maybe it's less, maybe it's more, but we don't know the answers yet. And so let's take the time to do that work in partnership so that we can get those answers. And I'm confident that we will continue to be updated along the way, and we'll get to the right outcome in the end.
Okay. Greg.
This is Commissioner Freese. So Marty and Kathy, I also heard you guys both say that we have to amend our adaptive management plan with our, right? So to accept the additional, right? Is that correct? Yes? Yeah. Okay. So we would also, so with regard to the flip side, the Badfish Creek side, we would have an opportunity to discuss any other actions we would do beyond what and so I said, for everybody else who doesn't know, I'm on the committee our win. So we would have an opportunity as part of amending adaptive management plan for actions we would want to.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Well, it was 30 years ago, or a little over 30 years ago, when I was appointed to the commission, and one of the first large decisions, was Verona attachment to the district. And I have to say, we, as I mentioned at the last meeting, it was done for two reasons: the effluent recharge or discharge point to Badger Mill Creek. One was to maintain a discharge point in case we ever thought of doing a satellite plant in Verona. And that was because we knew that there were probably coming different requirements for different parts of the district, right? Sugar River has a different standard than Badfish Creek. And then it was also, and more importantly, I think, in my mind at the time, was to make up for what they had indicated was decline of flow of Badger Mill Creek due to water withdrawal from municipal wells. And I think over time, the way I understand it now, that has changed. That we did our job, we put that water there to help, but now more engineered systems have taken effect with recharge and 90% recharge. In some places, it's, as Rick Eilertson testified at the hearing 2 weeks ago, where there's 100% recharge. And so, we're using effluent water we used it to try to help the stream, and I think that did that. And now it's time for communities to step up, and we're giving $1 million in that regard to help assist them in meeting more engineered natural things. Because first and foremost, there's two issues I see. One is the phosphorus compliance, and the other issue really that we've dealt with 30 years ago and are dealing with today is land use. And that really the changes that we're seeing in Badger Mill Creek are caused by land use. It wasn't the district withdrawing water, it was land use changes in the Sugar River Basin, the development that caused municipal wells to be put in, withdrawing the water, municipal well municipal development until they started doing recharge had a more major effect on lack of water infiltrating for groundwater. But I think that's all changed. At least the data that we saw from the district, and we can argue was a few months enough or not, I don't know. But we may get more data on that or not. But I think the district did its job, and now it's time for the communities to actually step up. You know, Verona, if you're so concerned, or other communities, they could look to do 100% recharge and more than the standard 90% that is pretty common in most ordinances throughout this part of Dane County. So I think, you know, the district played a role, and it's going to continue to play a role with that $1 million, or it may get changed. And we've been doing our part with Yahara Winds in Badfish Creek, and you know, you read the paper this morning on the blooms of algae and blue-green algae, and it's disconcerting because it's so early, right? I mean, don't even know if I want to kayak on the lakes anymore. But the issue is that point source providers have been having to bear the brunt for a lot of the contaminants, and we bear the brunt, and that's one reason I think why Yahara Winds is successful, because we only have so much phosphorus we can deal with, when a lot of the phosphorus, as the paper mentioned this morning, is coming from egg activity. And so that's where Yahara Winds comes in, and where we've been trying to be successful with that in terms of working with egg producers to reduce their phosphorus loadings. And by going through things such as the digesters up there, or the buffer strips, or overseeding of fields and stuff like that. And I think the overseeding is important. When you read, where they say that it was the heavy snows and rains in April that have led to this, because there were no crops on the fields at that point. So it's almost, I take a look, for 30 years, been sitting on the commission, and we've been dealing with phosphorus, for much of that time, chlorides and other issues. It's almost like a Sisyphean task, right? That we keep pushing the rock up and it keeps coming back down. And that's because you've got legacy phosphorus that the county's trying to deal with, and things like that. But will it ever, I don't know. I mean, until you really get a good, wise handle on the egg aspect, we may be suffering with this for a while. But that's where Yahara Winds, and that's why we did Yahara Winds, because we realized that we could partner and do a better job watershed and holistically than we could by just trying to do a treatment plant option for phosphorus. So I guess that's what I have to say. Does anybody else have any other comments before we vote? Anybody virtually? No hands up. Okay, so we have a motion to approve the 2023-05-25 R8. Discontinuance of flow to Badger Mill Creek as a preferred phosphorus compliant option, and the committing of the $1 million to improve the health and resilience of Badger Mill Creek. We will do a roll call vote.
Commissioner Bookland?
Aye.
Commissioner Clark?
Aye.
Commissioner Eskridge?
Aye.
Commissioner Freeze?
Aye.
Commissioner Havel?
Aye.
Commissioner Meyer?
Aye.
Commissioner Murphy?
Aye.
Commissioner Rummel?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Motion carries on that. So that completes our discussion of the topics for today. Thank you all for your participation and our good discussion, and to Marty, Kathy, and all the others who were involved in putting together the large reports and data. Okay, that will take us to the CED update. Michael?
This is Michael Muka. A brief report. We have an owner community meeting scheduled for June 7th at 8 a.m. It is a virtual meeting, and we'll be providing an update to owners on our service charges work. You recall we came to you with some options for modifying our service charges, the fiscal work group met recently, had some more thoughts and ideas, some really good ideas. So we want to give an update at this meeting and also start to just orient our owners to our budget, of just what our budget is, what it looks like, our trends, those types of things. Is just to bring the owners along with that's happening. The second thing is we had a treatment facility overflow, TFO for short, on May 12th. And it's about 100 gallons, and we believe it occurred in the middle of the night. It was a failure of some level monitoring equipment, the return activated sludge well. So I have some pictures, but I don't think it shows stuff flowing down and shows the valve. But our maintenance staff, they identified the issue and have taken corrective action, and we first notified the DNR because any TFO is reported. With that, I'll turn it back over.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Alan, you've got the operations report.
Is it on? Good morning, commissioners, those in attendance. Alan Grooms, I'm operations manager here for the district. I'll be doing the April operations performance report. So looking at, this is actually for April. So taking a look at this, for CBOD 5, we had a little bit on the higher end of our range for what we put out, but 3.9 milligrams per liter discharge. That's at this time of the year, limit is 16. That limit does tighten up in the summer. So that's on the top end of our historical range, but that's, it's not an unusual value. Ammonia 0.12, again, good value for us. That's largely driven by just, how we're being loaded and whether we can get enough air to the tanks. As we've kind of grown, it's like sometimes we're a little more challenged on that ammonia limit, just an ability to get enough air into the tanks. As you may recall on our CAP, we have an upcoming liquid processing improvements phase 2 project will be coming. They'll be looking at upgrading blowers and diffusers in order to do a better, it's actually, I was going to say a better job on the ammonia, but it's actually going to do a better job treating ammonia and nitrogen. So it's possible our ammonia number may actually go up, but we may drop that down to reduce the total nitrogen going to the environment. So that's a future story, actually. I kind of maybe said too much. So phosphorus numbers look good, 0.25. Total suspended solids, 5.7 was good value for us. Again, that phosphorus and the solids tend to track together since we're a biological phosphorus removal system. We do all of that without use of chemicals. Chloride value at 365, so right in the middle of the historical 3-year range. And then fecals, our disinfection season's really doing well. I should remind that since this is actually month of April, that 30M most probable number, that was taking place while we were trying to do cleaning of our clarifiers. So that introduced extra solids as we were washing those clarifiers down and cleaning those troughs out. We weren't sure, this is the first year with that extended UV season. We weren't quite sure how we would meet that challenge or get through that. The new UV system seems like it did a really good job. 30 is an outstanding value by any account when you consider what we were doing at that time. I was expecting it might be a little higher than that, certainly within the limits, but any questions on the performance of the treatment plant? I think that's all I have. We did, I will add one quick thing that isn't on here. Metroco season, we did finish up hauling about a week ago, I believe. And so we have storage right now good well into September. So, and by late summer, usually late July, early August, we start hauling out on some of the wheat lands. So we're in great shape on biosolid storage right now. So any questions for me?
Quick one, Alan and I love to geek out on this stuff. Forgive us, but I can't remember if we talked about this last time you were before us, but it's spring, and believe me, Badfish Creek is on my mind. So thanks, to the earlier conversations. When did we turn on the disinfection again? Remind me of the new, because this year was it. This was when he did it first. The first time, we've hit the new date, the new earlier date. When was it again?
That would have been March 1st, so.
Okay, so I'll be back in March, and we've been disinfecting ever since.
Since first
Okay.
March, yep.
Yeah.
What we did, we talked with DNR. They did agree to give us some, I believe it was called enforcement discretion if we were to exceed while we were trying to do cleaning while disinfecting. Because again, we weren't sure how that would handle that. We'd have been doing cleaning of the clarifiers and probably would have started around Valentine's Day. So pretty cold. It's pretty wet, miserable work while they're doing it. It's necessary, but you know, it would be really hard on our staff doing that in early or late February and early December. So fortunately, it looks like it worked out really well. So
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Alan. And regulatory and legal, Vanessa?
Thank you. Yes, this is Vanessa Wishart. I wanted to provide just a couple of updates on things that have changed since we submitted the regulatory review. It's legislative season. Things are moving kind of quickly on that front, certainly. So a couple of updates on the bills that were documented here. So there's Senate Bill 52, Assembly Bill 61, which is that de-icer program. There was an executive session on that bill on Wednesday, and there was an amendment proposed that would make some changes, including changing ownership of that program from DNR to DATCAP, and then changing the program from a certification program to a registration program. So we're going to keep following that one closely. I just wanted to note those changes because of that amendment. Then there's Senate Bill 99, Assembly Bill 100, which is the bill that makes projects for I&I reduction in private laterals eligible for clean water funding. There was a hearing on May 16th on that bill, and I think we continue to see very good support for that bill and are anticipating it'll keep moving forward. And then one other note that's kind of a big one, there was, in the time since we submitted the regulatory report, a PFAS bill introduced in the legislature. So that, the primary component relative to the district and other communities is that bill would create a municipal grant program for PFAS. It's bifurcated from funding, so funding would come through the budget process. We've not had a hearing or anything scheduled on that bill yet. We're certainly following that one very closely, and we'll keep doing so. And then just one note I wanted to make on the regulatory side, the regulatory report includes an overview of the anti-degradation policy that DNR is in the process of updating. There was recently a public comment period on that closed on May 19th. So we'd anticipate seeing over the summer a response to comments and then moving forward on that rule package. I'm happy to take any other questions.
Was a written report in the information that you just provided to us, plus the additional stuff? I didn't see the written report. Yeah.
Oh, I apologize. We do, yeah, we have that. It actually didn't include some of the information I provided because it was submitted earlier than that happened. But we certainly will keep you posted on that, and we'll provide the updates I provided today in the next regulatory report.
Okay. Send out the written report to the.
That's just a quick question on that, Bill, you mentioned. Was that a grant program to local municipalities, or what was proposed just generally, high level in that?
Sure. So there were a number of different things proposed in the bill, but one of the primary policy proposals is to create a municipal grant program that would provide funding for things like municipal wastewater and water utility testing for PFAS, some remediation efforts. Again, there's no specific funding in this bill. It's just a policy bill. The funding would all have to come through the budget, right? So the bill would create the programs, and then we would need to look for budget funding for those programs.
Okay, let's move on. Future meeting schedule. So we're heading towards summer, and I know, Ezra, you're going to miss the next meeting and then the last meeting in July, correct? And so I guess just a heads up to everybody, all the commissioners, if you're going to be missing a meeting, please let us know in advance so as early as possible so we don't run into any quorum issues. And then we can deal with what we have to deal with when we have quorum issues. So, the future agenda topics, anybody have any other future agenda topics or other business? Seeing none, do we, Ken or Marcia have any comments on anything?
No, I'm good, Tom. Thank you.
Okay.
Are we virtual for the foreseeable future into the summer? Is
Well,
that the current
I think there was
plan?
one meeting in June that was in person.
It says July 13th, tentative in person, and I was just gonna tell Janelle, I'm gonna have to be remote for that, but I can attend.
And we wanted, after our, review back in May 1st, we discussed having a discussion on how often we want to do in-person meetings, so.
I've scheduled that on the calendar for us to just, for the commission.
Okay.
It's coming up.
Okay, so we'll be doing that, so we may be increasing our in-person meetings. Okay, let's see. Do we have a motion to adjourn? Tom Wilson's not here, so.
I'll move adjournment. Greg Freeze.
Motion by Freeze, Commissioner Freeze, second by
second.
Commissioner Bookland to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None, motion carries. Thank you, everybody. Have a good rest of the week.
Yeah.